In the true Toastmasters fashion, we will start on time and end on time. So to begin, have you ever wondered why you would get involved in mentoring, either as a mentor or a mentee, or you could call it a protege? Pat Johnson, distinguished Toastmaster and past international president, credits mentoring to her longevity and many life-changing opportunities in Toastmasters. She met her first mentor at her very first Toastmasters meeting, and throughout her 39 years of membership, she has had a series of formal, informal, and long-term and short-term mentors. Pat has found that she has much more powerful and capable in each role she undertakes when she has a mentor to turn her ideas by, who is able to provide safe brainstorming space, different points of view, and objective feedback when needed. Pat discovered that once she got involved in mentoring and acting as a mentor, this type of relationship development followed her into her professional career. During this session, Pat will share some of her personal experiences, as well as discuss the supports that are available for us when mentoring and being mentored. If you are considering either being a mentor or looking for a mentor, come and participate in this interactive activity today. So please join me in welcoming distinguished Toastmaster, past international president, Pat Johnson.
Thanks, Dorothy, and thank you, everyone. District 21, great to see you here. And thank you, Island Excellence, for coming out in force. This will be your education session for the morning, or for your meeting this week, an extended one, and welcome everyone. Yes, mentoring is absolutely vital, in my opinion, because Toastmasters is an education program and we don't have instructors. We are peer learning. We experience things together, provide feedback. Then why wouldn't we want to have mentors who would believe the highest and best for us and hold us to that level? I want you to keep in mind that this saying that people come into our lives, some of them come for a reason, some of them come for a season, and some of them come for a lifetime. And I would share with you that my mentors have come for reasons. Some of them have come for seasons, and some of them have come for a lifetime. And I would think that you would also have that experience. As was mentioned in the introduction, there's informal mentoring, and we'll talk a bit about that, and I'll share some examples of that. There are formal mentoring programs, and we're going to talk about that a bit, and I'll share some experiences in that. There are short-term mentoring relationships, and there's those long, lengthy ones that continue to push us to grow and expand our skills and our knowledge. And in my experience, I've had all of those. So I'll share some of the people, because I think we learn best from stories and other examples that people have had, and we can go, oh, I had one of those also. Or, oh, that's cool. I never thought I could mentor that way. But I want to start out with, first of all, saying that my very first mentor, as was mentioned in the introduction, was in my very first Toastmaster meeting. And I walked into that first meeting very reluctant, hard to believe, but in those days, a long time ago, I was very, very shy and didn't go out anywhere where I would be seen. That wasn't, I didn't want to be seen. I was very quiet, withdrawn, didn't have well, I had lots of opinions, but I didn't express any of them. And I was taking a university course, and somebody in my university course suggested, after I had a hugely embarrassing attempt to introduce a senator in Canada at a big meeting, which I'd been forced to do. I never volunteered for it, but the person came up to me and said, you should join Toastmasters. And I thought, are you kidding me? I don't want to ever do this again in my whole life. And because he was from my hometown, I'd never heard of Toastmasters before, he encouraged me to come to his meeting. Now, I'd like to say that I rushed over, but 6 months, or well, let me think, that was in May, and it was the next April. So I guess it was 11 months that it took me to get there to my first meeting. So I walked very slowly to that first meeting. And I thought, well, I can survive it because it's in the basement of the church where I grew up. All I have to do is open the door. I know what it's going to look like. I know what it'll be like. They won't eat me up. I'm protected. I'm in the church. It'll be safe. I'll know one person there. Surely the person that invited me will be there. Well, when I got to the door that night and I pulled that door open, I was about to let it close without me going through it, when I heard this voice say, "Welcome to Toastmasters." And I knew I was caught. I didn't know for how long that I would be caught. I didn't realize that 39 years later, I was still here. So he really caught me. But I knew I couldn't slam the door and go away. And so I walked through, and at the bottom of these concrete stairs going down into the basement stood this burly man. He had thick, dark hair and thick black eyebrows. His hair was black also. And on his right brow, he had a scar that had grown in with white hair. And I thought, oh, you're interesting looking. I've seen you around town, because this was a small town. So I walked down the stairs and he says, "Welcome to Toastmasters. My name is Joseph Lariviere." And he was a Frenchman that lived in my community and that worked for Manitoba Hydro. And we lived in the North Country. And that was it. Joseph invited me in. It was a very small club. I think when we were busting at the seams, we had 8 people. But what a gift it was for me, because I got to speak. I got to be the secretary and the treasurer. Probably after about 2 weeks of membership, I was, obviously oriented and had to take an office role because everybody had an office role. So I was in hook, line, and sinker. Well, about 3 months into my membership, Joseph and I were standing at break because we had an evening meeting that lasted 2 hours. We were on a break. We were in the kitchen having coffee. And I said to Joseph, "How far are you in the program?" Because then I realized, hey, I've got manuals, I've got a program I'm working. How far are you? How long have you been in Toastmasters? He said, "Oh, I've been about 5 years in Toastmasters." And I said, "Oh, okay. So how many programs have you done? Where are you at?" And he had done about 5 speeches. And this is in a small club where everybody spoke, but I had noticed he didn't speak. And so I said because in those days, let's just go back, this is 1983. In 1983, you had to do 15 speeches to get your first designation. So he'd only done a third of his first program. So I'm like, okay. And inside me, I found that competitive streak. And I said to him, "I'll race you to your CTM." And so fortunately for me, Joseph said, "Yes, you're on." And I won't tell you the ending. Oh, yes, I will. I beat him. I whipped him, because I don't know if he ever got to CTM, but I did. Joseph helped me find my competitiveness just by giving me answers and being willing. And I thought, what an inspiration he was. So for that moment, Joseph was a reason. He was my mentor for a reason. He challenged me. He took me on. When I said, "I'll race you," he said, "You bet we will." And that inspired me. So it can be such a little thing that informally inspires somebody to get at it and get in the program and get engaged. Well, Joseph continued in more of a, we were never formally paired as mentees and mentors, but Joseph kept me engaged. And Joseph continued to mentor me in his brisk way. So as I said, we had about 8 members. I presented about every 2 weeks. I did a speech, and I had a lot to learn. So I had no vocal variety because I was very reserved, very shy. I spoke like this, and this was when I was excited. And this is when I brought a lot of vocal variety after working hours to put crescendos and decrescendos. And my speech scripts would have all these scores, notes in them like a music page, because I had studied music. And I went, okay, I'll put a crescendo in and I'll remember to get louder. And I'll put pianissimo and I'll remember to get quieter. But it never translated for me. So Joseph naturally turned out to be an evaluator quite often. Joseph would give me feedback, a variety of feedback, and then he would say, Pat, we need some more vocal variety. As I mentioned, I would go away. Sometimes I got to the extent where I would write my speech out. I would practice it in a whisper. And I would practice it ranting and raving to try and exercise my voice. And then I would do it really loud and I would bring it down. And I would do it like this as I went through my speech to practice using my voice. And it never seemed to improve, but I thought I was improving. So this one night, after repetitively hearing this feedback from Joseph, I thought, okay, I've got this. I've got the speech prepared. I practiced it. I know that I've got vocal variety. Joseph was the evaluator. He showed up, and true to Joseph form, he said at the end of the evaluation, Pat, we just need more vocal variety from you. In my frustration, I said, Joseph, when are you going to ask me for something other than vocal variety? And he just laughed in his friendly, jovial way and said, when you give us more vocal variety. And I thought, what a gift. At the time, I was frustrated, but now I look back and I mean, the frustration went pretty quickly with his sense of humor. But when I look back now, I think what a brilliant mentor he was. Because how many times do you listen to somebody who's new in your club and say, oh, if they would just use gestures better. And then about 3-4 months into it, you quit providing that feedback because we forget what we saw them capable of doing, and we fall into, oh, that's just the way she is, or oh, that's just how he is. So when people don't respond, do we give up on them? Maybe it's really difficult for them. I didn't feel that I really owned vocal variety for 20 years. I worked on vocal variety for 20 years in Toastmasters. And Joseph LaRiviere was there for the first 3 or 4, but after that, he sat here and he never let me go. I would do a presentation and I would hear, we just need more vocal variety. And so we don't know how long people stay in our brains and support us and hold us to a high standard. We can all come and give our minimum, the bare minimum, but I feel that as a mentor, one of the greatest gifts that I can give the person I'm mentoring is that I say, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What's your vision? And then I up the ante for them because I tell them the great potential and the greatness I see in them. I see, as some of my mentors have seen, potential that they can't see yet. And I feel that's my responsibility, with their permission, to hold them to a higher standard. So one of the first things as a mentor, please spend time thinking about who you experience when this person walks into the room. Not who they are when they deliver with their skills, but who you see and the potential you see in them, and hold them to that. Help them see that vision of them. If they want to be a professional speaker as a mentor, do not say, "Oh, I'm not sure you can get there," or "I don't see that happening for you," or "That'll take you 10 years." Ask them how they are going to get there. Ask them to help you mentor them. What do you need from me? Tell me your vision. Share with me the steps that you see you need to take, and help me fill in the gaps that you have. Why are you asking me to mentor you? So really important to build a relationship. So Joseph was one of the greatest mentors to keep me in Toastmasters for those first several years. The next mentor I had in Toastmasters happened to come along while I was still in that club. And at that time, he came and visited our club, and I was an area director. And he asked if he could be my mentor. And I had never met another area director. I was involved at the district executive team at that time, but that's how I was learning, was showing up at those monthly executive meetings and going to the education we had every month. But he taught me big picture. And this was such a gift for me, because this is where I found me. I realized I'm a visionary. I don't like doing minutia. I don't like doing details. I love creating big pictures. I like to do strategic planning. I like to plan the future for 5 to 10 years. I like to look at the gaps that exist and solve the problems so we can keep building. And Eric gave me that. Eric said to me, "Do whatever you want to do. Be innovative, be creative, but don't you dare break any rules. You read the manual, you take out the district handbook, you know that. You read the policies, you read the bylaws, and don't you break any rules. You lead within the rules, and you can challenge them, but don't break those rules." And it gave me great freedom. And as I took on that area director role, I did things that had never been done before in our division and area. They were all inside the rules, but nobody had thought to do something different and to check in and make sure it was okay with the leaders, the district team, that I was doing this. And so I thank Eric as a mentor for giving me that. He also was so powerful in his own right. And he shared with me his personal story and gave me permission to share it. And he was a German immigrant that came to Canada to work that didn't speak very good English. One day he was standing in a bus stop during the winter in Winnipeg. And if any of you have been to Winnipeg in the winter, it was cold and miserable. And there were a bunch of people come into the bus stop beside him. And they were talking about something. And he said, "What are you talking about?" in his English. And they said, "Oh, we're from Toastmasters. We just came out of our Toastmaster meeting." He said, "Oh, can I come? I'd like to practice my English." And they said, "Well, you don't speak very good English, but you could come on a probationary level." Now, this was many years ago. "You could come on a probationary level and see if you can keep up." So he went, and Eric Stumiller ended up being the international president of Toastmasters International. And so I always think that it's so wonderful that we never know when people come into our clubs, when we say, "Yeah, come on, give it a try, and we'll see if we can work with you. Where do you want to go? What do you want to be? What do you want to achieve?" And they supported him, and he went right to the top or right to the bottom in Toastmasters in terms of leadership. So I was so grateful for Eric and all the stories he shared with me and the lessons, and helped me see that big picture. He also helped me see how the district and the region and the international organization worked and gave me a hunger for international conventions, because you get exposed to the world there. And I've gone to international conventions since I was a 5-year Toastmaster and I don't think I've ever missed a year, out of 37 years or something going. So it's it's those people. So Eric was there for a season and a reason, but definitely not a lifetime. We lost him with brain cancer, and it was very sad when he left so many people that he mentored and impacted the world over. So let's look at when you're a mentee. What do you do when you're a mentee? And this is something that I learned by being mentored, that I learned that I had to set the pace and I had to set the direction, because it was all about me. They were there to support me. And if I didn't know where I was going, they couldn't support me in getting there. So that was hard. That was, for me, that was a huge growth opportunity that I didn't feel was an opportunity for a long time, because I had to figure out what I wanted. And for me to say what I wanted was very risky. That wasn't a behavior I knew, but I learned with support to do that. I also, as a mentee, we have to be willing to listen to what the mentor says, but we also have to sift through it, because we can't take it as gospel or directly apply it. We need to adapt it sometimes. Sometimes we have to say, that's not for me. That goes against my values, or that's not what I want to do. So we have to be clear, crystal clear on our values, on what we want. And also, is this the mentor for us? And how long is that person going to mentor us? Because we outgrow our mentors. We sometimes outgrow our mentors. If they're not asking us to step out of our comfort zone, to be uncomfortable, to do risky things, we've probably outgrown our mentor, and we need to go find somebody who helps us get back into that scary zone where growth happens. So as a mentee, critical to look at, how are you going to meet with your mentor? Meet regularly, set it in the calendar, be committed to your goals. So as I've been asked to mentor a number of people, and I've taken lessons from people who have mentored me. And so what I ask my mentees is, you have to tell me what you need, because I don't know what you want to know from me. I could share how to plant a garden, how to be the best raspberry picker that you ever saw, how to bake the best pies that you've ever eaten, or maybe to deliver a presentation, or maybe how to run for the board. But I don't know what you want from me unless you're clear in asking me, and then we can be partners. So it's got to be a two-way street. The mentee has to do their work. The other thing that I want to say is a mentee has to have their own engine power. By that, I mean, I'm not dragging a mentee along. The mentee is in front of me because they know where they're going. And I ask that. When for example, I go to a convention, international convention, and people will come up and say, oh, would you be willing to mentor me? And I almost always, I would say 99.9% of the time, I say yes. And then I say, here's my email, you get a hold of me. And I'm sad to report that 98% probably never contact me. And I go, was it just that they thought that that was flattering me? Because I don't consider that flattery. Is it that they didn't know what they wanted? Is it that they lost their way? Is it that they really don't want to be mentored? So I'm curious, and I think that that's critical as a mentee. and also as a mentor, that you put the mentee up front. It's their goals. It's not yours. It's not for you to take over, but to empower them. So I met a mentor that I decided I wanted through an interesting process, and I'll share that with you. I met this mentor when I was coming in as what's now called Club Growth Director. So that was in 2000, no, in the 1990s. I met him at an international convention. I'd just been elected Club Growth Director, and I didn't really know very much. And I knew I needed help, and I went looking. Now, my criteria for a mentor at that time, because I knew I was going to be district director one day, was that they couldn't be from my district, and they had to have had some success in what I was asking them to mentor me in. Meaning that I wanted them to have been at least distinguished, because I didn't want to learn from somebody that hadn't been successful. That seemed self-defeating. So I went to the convention looking for somebody that wouldn't buy into, oh, the district's always done it this way. I wanted creativity. I didn't want boundaries. I wanted wide open spaces and opportunities. And so I went looking. I was on the market for a mentor. I watched people come and go at that convention for the whole week, and there was one person that kept catching my eye. I stood around, I watched them, I observed them, I listened to them have conversations, and many of you have heard me tell this story before. Nowadays, it could be called that I stalked him. I followed him everywhere, not conspicuously and not creepy like, but I was always in the background listening and watching and seeing how he was behaving. And it was now the end of the convention, and I had decided this is a person, because he was able to talk to people, he enjoyed himself, he was comfortable in his skin, people knew who he was, and I thought, oh man, I could learn so much from this person. And so the last day of the convention, and I thought, wow, if I don't ask him now, it's never going to happen. It's amazing how if you paint yourself into a corner and fear takes over, you get brave. Well, I got up that morning and I went down to that floor of that convention, and I thought, I'll find this guy and I'm going to ask him to mentor me. And I saw him and I stepped forward and I let him walk by. And I watched him, and as the day went by, and I saw him a number of times, and finally, towards the end of the day, just when I was going, okay, come on, you're going to lose this opportunity, he walked over and he said, hello, my name's Ted. What's your name? And I said, I'm Pat from Canada. He said, oh, I'm thrilled to meet you. I've seen you around this week. What are you doing? And I said, I'm a club growth director, just elected. And he said, oh, fantastic. And how is it going? And what are your plans? And away he went, and he talked and talked. And I started breathing again. And in about 10 minutes into the conversation, I said, would you be my mentor? And he said, of course I will, but you have to be in touch with me when you get home. He gave me his contact information. In those days, we didn't live on email. We didn't have Zoom, nothing like that. He gave me his contact information, and he walked away. And the next week when I got home, I phoned him in Dublin, Ireland. And I said, would you really be my mentor? And he said, you know, of all the people that asked me over that week, you're the only one that's called me, and I'd be thrilled to be your mentor. And he was my mentor through district officers' roles at the district while I was an international director, and when I went up through the executive committee. And to this day, Ted Corcoran, past international president, is my mentor. He mentors me in leadership. And so what roles does he hold? And what needs did he fill? Ted helped me brainstorm, because I found that I had discovered through other mentoring roles that I had this huge capacity to come up with ideas and do things. He helped me get focused. We spent We spent a whole day one day sitting in a restaurant. I'm amazed they didn't throw us out, but we went for a walk and came back a whole day after a convention that we were at, and we were in a restaurant, and we spent the whole day talking about what I wanted to do in the future because I was so afraid to say what I wanted. And he just allowed me to talk and talk around things and talk through things. And he asked me questions, and he had all the patience in the world. Something like a father would do, or a good brother, or a good sister, or a parent, or a grandparent, which I didn't have. And so Ted became that as my mentor. But what Ted did is he always dangled the next thing in front of me and challenged me. He did the Joseph LaRiviere method. He challenged me to be competitive, to not be afraid, that there was no shame in losing. There was shame in giving up. Well, not even shame, but don't give up. Go after what you want. What if you get it? It's like the dog that chases a car. What's he going to do when he catches it? Well, that was the question I had to face. What was I going to do if I actually got elected to the district team? And when I didn't get elected the first 2 times I ran, he was there and supported me, encouraged me to keep going, to go back and say, what do I need to do to get elected? What do I need to learn? How can I grow greater as a leader? What skills do I need? And he helped me. He told me the plain truth. And sometimes it made me cry. But it was the truth. And I didn't know it was the truth until many months of being introspective, because leadership is an inside job. Leadership's not out here doing things. It's not checking the boxes of all the activities. It's the inside work that your mentors help you with. That when you look at it and say, am I vulnerable? Do I bring trust to the relationship that I have with each person? Do I instill confidence? Do I hold people accountable, even when they fight against that accountability? And those are all things that he taught me by example and by having discussion and giving me space to learn it in my time. So those are things that in mentee and mentor relationships, we really need to work out. I needed to be vulnerable with Ted to say, I don't know if I could ever do this, but what I'd like to try is, after I finished district director and we were distinguished, people said to me, oh, you should be on the board, you should run for the board. And I'm always, when people start telling me I should do something, I want to tell them to go should on someone else and leave me alone. Like, I need to be pulled to do something, not pushed. And so my mentor has to pull me and encourage me and be there and hold me up if I need it, but don't push me. I don't like to be pushed. And I don't think we need to be pushed. I think we need to be inspired to step forward, not pushed into something. And that's what he did so beautifully for me. I made the commitment when I reached out to him, as mentees need to do. And so as a result, that's what I say to people that ask me to mentor them. I said, get in touch with me and we'll talk about it. One of the things also that I love to do as a mentor, because often we're mentoring just at club level, and I don't mean just at club level, because I think that's the most important level. Nothing exists without our members in the clubs succeeding. We must ask our members to step up and do what's difficult. Because what I know is if people are not achieving and experiencing success in Toastmasters, if they're not doing things that are uncomfortable for them, they're going to leave. Because they're in school. We're all in school here. And if we're not learning, we drop out. How many of you have taken courses and you sat in the class and went, oh my gosh, I could teach this class, right? I have. I've had instructors say to me, Oh, no, you're in my class. You should be teaching this class. I go, but you've got the credentials. I don't. I've got the life experience. You've got the credentials, so you get to teach it. So we need to call, and that those classes were boring for me. I didn't listen to the content. I used the instructor as a mentor and said, oh, how does he teach? Let me watch his teaching styles. That's what I got out of those classes. So we need to call our members forward, just as we look for area directors. We don't need to say to area directors, oh, it's not hard at all. That's the first thing I would hear and say, I'm not interested. I want to do something that's challenging. I want to use my brain. I want to experience something greater than what I had yesterday by taking on a role and spending my time doing it and learning something new that'll advance my life. So I think that mentoring is so, so important, and having it both ways. So back to the club. When I mentor somebody in the club, and I love mentoring new members because they're so full of excitement and they have big goals, and I want to support those big goals. And I love when they walk in and I see their potential. They don't always see it, but I go, wow, they are like Michelangelo's lump of whatever he used. What did he use? Marble. And as he chipped away to find the brilliance inside, the art inside that, that's what it's like when new members arrive in our club. And I go, oh, this is so fantastic, because we're going to learn so much from them. We don't want them cookie cutters. We want them all unique, brilliant people that we help find their own brilliance. And that's the exciting part of all of that. The thing that as I was saying, back to where I start with them, I invite my mentees for coffee. And I said, you have to have at least an hour for our first one, because I like to talk. And I've been in Toastmasters for a long time. And I want to tell you about our international organization. The first thing I want you to understand is the power of the organization that you just joined. I want you to understand how much learning there is, and that you can use this organization by paying your tuition every year for as long as you want to come and learn. And I talk about the opportunities that there are to speak and to lead at the club level when they're ready to do that, at the area level when they're ready to do that, at the division level when they're ready to do that, at the district level when they're ready to do that, at the regional, being on an international board, or even leading an international organization. That if they aspire, and in the speaking, they can go up and speak through all those levels and be a world champion speaker if they wish to do that in Toastmasters. But our brand new members walking in the room don't know that. And I just love when the eyes get big like this when I talk about that. And I said, just remember that there's over 340,000 members that belong to the same class as you do, and you can access them however you want. You can learn from them if you want. We're all learning together. We've got people in 149 countries of the world. If you want to learn French or you want to learn Polish, you can join a Toastmasters club and do it there. Or you can, like I did, work with somebody who lives in Rome, and now I'm going to Rome to actually meet them in person and ride on their scooter with them. So how great is that? Like, there's so many benefits in this organization, not just going through pathways. So this is one of the things I'm going to just go to pathways for a moment. As a mentor, you must be in the program, and you must be working the program, because what I know as a trained coach and instructor is that if you're not learning, you cannot mentor. You've got to be on your own path of growth. You've got to be involved. You've got to be the role model. I've got 5 paths going. When I talked to Dorothy a couple of weeks ago about this program, I signed up for level 3, prepare to mentor. And I I haven't put all the completions on it, but I took this module. How many of you have accessed Prepare to Mentor level 3 in Pathways? Great, Bobby, good for you. It's not, and Carlos, great. It's not a complex module, but it just walks us through. I love the part, and I want to share this with you directly from the program. On page 8 of the program, it talks about setting goals. And it says, when you write your goals, be aware of how the process feels. So this is about mentoring. And it talks about what you need to do as a mentor, setting goals, evaluate the process, how it feels, how you actually set goals. And just last week, I was on a session and somebody shared with me that their acronym for, that they're meaning, they use the acronym GOALS to mean go out and learn something. It's brilliant. Go out and learn something. That's what goals are, isn't it? So I love to set goals. How many of you set goals? I set goals every day. I have my top 6 every day. I get up, I have a list, and I have at the top of the list are the 6 things I have to get done today. And then my optional things are under that. So it helps be focused. It also talks about the program here, preparing to mentor, is share your excitement. If you're excited, let people know you're excited. I love Toastmasters. Toastmasters helped me build my career to the level that it went, to travel the world, to be able to walk into a room of people where I didn't know anybody and actually have the skills to stay and not run out, which is what I used to do. All those things. And then I was at the convention, international convention this year, and somebody said, "Oh, is Pat Johnson in the room?" And I turned to say, "I'm over here." And one of my colleagues said, "Oh, yes, she's over there working the room like she always does." And I went, isn't that interesting that I now unconsciously work the room when before I would run from the room? The power of Toastmasters and being mentored, because I wouldn't be here without the people who have supported me. To follow your protege's lead, really important as a mentor, as I said, for them to lead and you to support them. Accomplish the task. So there's no right or wrong way for them to reach their goals. Give them space to reach it their way and support them. Tweak that if there's more steps that have to go. Some people will set themselves up for failure. If somebody has a negative attitude, that's going to get in the way of their development. Challenge them on it. Don't be afraid to tell the truth in your mentoring relationship. Build that relationship of trust and vulnerability so you can actually help people with the things that are their Achilles heel, the things that are going to stop them from going where they want to go. It's going to be hard for them, but somebody has to tell the truth. And I think when we share those things, as my mentor did with me, I believe it was done only in love. There was no meanness involved. I was being asked to step out of, to become something greater. And that was a gift of love. So we want to follow their lead, but we also want to show them where they can go. And we want to give them their own head to develop that, as long as they can see where they're going. Value the differences. Let people do it their way, unless it's harming them, or, you know, we can share ideas, brainstorm, but then let them accomplish do it their way, as long as they know where they're headed. Focus on the end result. But I also want to say, don't get too attached to their outcome. One of the things that I learned as a coach is that you can't want it more than they want it. You can't want it more than they want it. And I see this sometimes in mentoring. The mentors want to take over and they start mothering and fathering and parenting this person to the goal. And I go, I'm not sure that person wants that goal anymore. I think the mentor wants it more than the protege wants it. So don't get in that trap. And then just support and encourage. And as I said, see the best. So those are just some of the concepts that are shared. And I really invite you and encourage you to get this level 3 module and experience and look for somebody to mentor. Find a new member and take it on. I want to share a mentoring that I had at work. And I went into work, and my career was built basically on skills that I learned in Toastmasters. And then when I was encouraged to continue at work and got promotions, I ended up going out and getting courses and formal education. But when I first started, a lot of it was because I was seen as a trainer. I was seen as somebody who could put thoughts together and wasn't afraid to be in a classroom. But I had a mentor at work. She was my boss. And she hired me after telling me that she'd seen me train and I was just as good as the people she had on her team at work, but I didn't have any credentials. And I said, how do I get credentials? And she said, well, if you figure out a way to get those credentials, I'll hire you. So I said, what kind of credentials do you need? So she told me. The next day I phoned the college and I found out. And the next day I phoned the university and I found out how I got those. Within a week, I was registered in the training program. It's amazing how things just all aligned. They were just starting one of those programs and I got in on the last day. And I got in and I took this program. And when I was graduating from this program, it was very interesting because it was all skill-based and learning about building curriculum and working a classroom and all of that. At the end, when we were graduating, we went around the room and people were saying where they were going to use their curriculum to change what they were doing in their school system. And so it came to me, and we'd never had this discussion anytime during this program. And they said, and so how are you going to apply this to your classroom? And I went, well, I don't have a classroom. And they said, well, don't you teach at the college? And I went, no. And they went, but this program was only for college instructors. I said, nobody told me that. They said, well, we assumed you were a college instructor because you registered. I said, I phoned the college and they said it was open and I could register. So that's how strange it was in alignment. I phoned the afternoon. They had told the instructors to phone and get registered. My call came between their calls and I got registered without any questions. And I took the course and now we're graduating. So the instructor said to me, I'm not sure that you can get this university credit. And I went, I've done the work. And she said, well, what does the class think? And the class said, oh, we think she should graduate. She did all the work with us and everything. So they graduated me and gave me the credits. 2 months later, so I was thrilled. I went back to Bonnie and I said, guess what? I got my credentials. She said, how? I said, I don't know. I got an instructor's course and they graduated me. And she said, okay, I'll hire you. I went to work for her. The one thing I was not good at, didn't have a lot of confidence was writing. And Bonnie said, I write professionally. And I said, will you teach me? She said, absolutely. So every day that I wrote something, she would take her red pencil with my permission and she edited everything. Everything I wrote, she edited for the 5 years I worked with her. And I became a much better writer just by giving her permission to edit because I loved the way she wrote. And she wrote professionally. She wrote books even. So, you know, it can be that informal given the circumstances. But let's end I got to go back to the college and end that story because the program had been set up just for college instructors. So I'm waiting for the bill to pay for my tuition because I hadn't got a bill. So I phoned the college and I said, I did get a bill. And I need to pay my tuition for the course that I just graduated from. And they said, there's no record. There was no bills for that course. That was for staff. And so there's no way to bill you. I went, well, universe, thank you. I now have a new job that pays me some money. I can help my son in university. I've got a new professional credential. I got graduated in a class I wasn't qualified to get into, and it didn't cost me a cent. It cost me a lot of time and work, but it's amazing. The lesson I took from that was be really focused on what you want, and the universe just opens doors. So be clear on what you want as a mentor, what you want to do, who you want to mentor you. If you're a protege, be very, very clear on what you want to gain from that relationship. And in January of this year, I'm going to celebrate my birthday in Dublin, Ireland, with my long-term mentor, Ted. And I'm going to leave it at that. And so we have some time for questions. And thank you for listening to all my stories.
Great. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your virtual hand, or if you want to raise your real hand, you could do that too. Well, I'll start with a question then. So Pat, you said, what struck me the most is when you said that 98% of the people who ask you to mentor you don't ever call. And I wondered if they think that, oh, she's just saying that, and
Yep.
she doesn't really mean it. And why I think that way is because I think I've done that. I've asked someone for something and then I don't follow through on it. And I think it's about our own self-confidence of maybe I'm not worthy of them.
I agree. I think so too, Dorothy. And it's a great point that I think sometimes people are surprised when people say, yes, they'll mentor them. Sometimes I think, and I can just answer this from my own perspective, sometimes we're not clear of what we should ask them. Maybe our goals aren't worthy of their time. But I want to encourage you, if that person is doing something that you would like to learn, that's all it has to be. Like Bonnie was a better writer. I wanted to learn how to write. I didn't need to know anything else from her. She was my boss, but I asked her because I thought this woman writes so well. And so I just asked, and it was very informal. But I had to be clear that I wanted it and to be willing to ask and then accept the help and know that I was worthy of that person. If they say yes, they usually mean yes. There's weird things that happen out of mentoring. I had a mother. I arrived in mainland China, in Shenzhen, and I went to speak at an event, and it was a parents' Toastmaster club, and they had even brought their children with them. This one mother came up to me and she kept asking me questions about parenting. And I said, well, I've raised my son and he's educated. So, oh, that'd be fabulous. She said, will you mentor me? And I said, well, if it's Toastmasters, I can mentor you. I'm not any expert on parenting. That woman wrote me every week for almost a year to ask me things about her child. She was bold and she knew what she wanted. And I went, good for you. I don't know how I qualified to mentor for that, but it's a case where it's really important to ask people who are qualified also to mentor you. So I finally said to her, because she was asking me all things, should she let her children do this? Should her daughter do this? Is this appropriate? And I'm going, so often I said, well, what would you talk to your daughter about? So I asked all the coaching questions. I didn't mentor. I ended up coaching because I didn't understand their family values. I didn't understand their family dynamics. I didn't live in the same country, so there's different culture. I couldn't, I just wanted to support her in having a good relationship with her daughter and having a good conversation. So yeah, but most people don't follow up. And I do think that we get in our own way. I've been there too, but my mentors helped me see things that I could do that I didn't see I could do.
Yeah. And Pat, I think that's what's so unique about Toastmasters is that now I will ask and I will follow through, but it's only because of Toastmasters that I'm able to do that, because we are surrounded by this wonderful organization who serve others so willingly. And it actually happened to me today. I phoned someone that I got a name from another Toastmaster who gave me this Toastmaster who gave me this one. Yeah. And I phoned and asked, and she said yes. And we're going for it. So it wasn't about mentoring, but just ask. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? Yeah. They say no, and you haven't lost anything. Anyone else would like to?
That's right. Yeah.
Ask. Anyone else? Miriam,
yes, Miriam.
Good evening, dear fellow Toastmaster and Miss Pat Johnson. I'm so nervous, but
Just
at
relax.
the same time, I'm so thrilled to be with you. I would like to ask you, what was the greatest challenge you have to overcome during all these years at Toastmasters? Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. That's a really good question. And the greatest challenge I had to overcome in my whole life was me. I was my greatest enemy. I didn't have any confidence. I didn't believe in me. I'd been told that I was ugly and I was stupid. And so I believed that. And so I really had to chisel all that programming away and to learn to love myself and know that I had skills. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Desiderata, but the Desiderata says that there'll always be greater and lesser than. And so that became the piece of philosophy that I held tight to me. And I went, but I don't have to be the best. And I don't have to be the worst. I can just be me. And so that is, I think that in my years of living and experience, I think the greatest gift that we bring to the world is to be ourselves and share our gifts. And I think that's the greatest work that of the burdens and the shame and the labels that somebody gave us, and say, you know what, there'll always be more beautiful people than me, but I'm not the ugliest person. And I know I've got a great smile because people tell me. And I never used to believe when people complimented me because of my background, my history. I thought they were trying to manipulate me. And so I had to learn to trust myself. And so as a result, I really grew intuitively, because I would check. I always checked inside, and I still do. When people say something or talk to me, I'm always checking. Are they genuine? Are they authentic? Are they real? And so I have this spidey sense that comes to play all the time, and it stands me in really good stead. And so I trust that now. So I had to trust myself. I had to learn to love myself and to accept myself that, yeah, I can do some things. I have some gifts, and I've got some things that are really hard for me to do, but I love learning. And as a result, I love teaching and I love coaching. And those are things that I love to do. So I'm proud of those things. Yes.
Thanks. You so much. It was
Thanks,
wonderful.
Miriam. Thank you. I know we were going to be Toastmasters and end on time, and I talked overtime, Dorothy. I can hear the buzzer going.
You're good. Well, then I will officially say we are adjourned, but you're welcome to stay and talk some more. And feel free to ask. After all, isn't that what we do at Toastmasters? We talk.
Phyllis.
Pat, I told my entire club about you and the respect I have for you as a speaker and a trainer, and I brought everybody with me tonight. So we even have guests of the club who aren't Toastmasters yet. And I told them that this material would be valuable in their personal, professional, volunteer lives, as well as future Toastmaster lives. So thank you very much. You didn't disappoint.
Oh, thanks, Phyllis. Yeah, I think it's, I think that when we look around to find people that are doing what, my great aunt used to say to me, hang out with the people that are doing what you want to become, or are the people that you want to become. And so it always taught me when I was young to hang out with the kids that were looking for education, that were doing sports, that were in music. I was always hanging with the people that I wanted to become like. And it's followed me through life because I'm always looking for things I can learn. And what we know also is that while you may not be a formal mentor, or people that haven't, or somebody hasn't asked you to formally mentor them, if you meet one another every week in your club or every month in your club, somebody's watching you. It might be how you chair the meeting, or it might be how you give the evaluation, or it might be how you follow up, or it might be just the way you interact with people. People are going to take and they learn from us. So just be your very, very best and hold yourself to a high standard. Don't be afraid, like I was for so many years, to say, oh, there's something I want to do and I think I'm capable and I'm going to go after it. I think Toastmasters, because of the support and the safe environment, allowed me to be very brave, And I found that when I didn't succeed, people came and encouraged, and it wasn't right or wrong. It was an experience. And for me, it was, what have I learned? What have I learned from this? And how can I be better next time? So, yeah, I think just remember that it's what's happening here, whether you're the mentor or the mentee, you're in a learning position. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wish you the very best in your roles as mentee and mentor. Carlos.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much for your very valuable and priceless time to share with us. A big direct question is it possible to motivate others just to go ahead and share with them that after level 2 or level 3, they can enjoy this program of mentorship? Should we leave them work their own pace? How that? Because, this is for free. And is it technology? Do you think there is something that is going on with members throughout all Toastmasters organizations? If we see the statistics, not so many members are taking this level 2 or level 3 path. What's your point?
I think it's a number of things. I think it's complex. I think, first of all, we have to be in an environment where we're encouraged to work the program or we don't work it. And we have to know how to find help if we run into difficulty. Let's go back to the beginning of Pathways. I've been in Toastmasters for 30 some years before we had Pathways. I've seen many versions of the education program. So when people say, oh, the legacy program was it, I go, which version of the legacy program? Right? Because remember, I did 15 speeches to get my first designation. Now we do 5? Go, whoa, is this getting better or worse? But so history is history. So I think there's some things, if you've got to be in an environment, in that learning environment, and see people around you working and feel inspired, which I have in my club, because I don't belong to a club where I go and I feel like I can just slack off. I go when I'm challenged. So that's really important, to be in a club where you're challenged. So I'm in pathways. Like I said, I have 5 or 6 paths. I opened this one up because of a conversation I had with Dorothy. And I went, oh, I didn't do that program yet. I didn't do that. And it's there and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. So I'll open it up and do it. Level 3 project, prepare to mentor. I think also that we have to remember that we're in Toastmasters and it's not a place to hang out. It's a place to hang out with fellow students, but we're here as students. We pay tuition every 6 months. And if you don't work the program, and if you don't encourage your members to work the program, they'll actually quit. Because when they look back in 6 months, they'll say, I haven't learned anything. I've watched table topics a whole bunch. And I know that Nancy's not nervous and Dorothy's not nervous and Carlos is bold, but I haven't got any more skills. So I'm not going to come anymore because I'm not getting anything for my money. So people assess all the time if they're getting their money's worth. And we're at fault if we don't encourage them to step forward and work the program. So the other part of that, Carlos, is that I think people think that there's a right or wrong way to do it. And there's not. There's only a way to do it or not do it. There's no right or wrong. I use my pathways the very same way I use the legacy program. When I was in the legacy program, I carried my manuals around with me all the time in my briefcase. I'd open them up because I had an idea for a speech, and I'd look in the manuals and find a place where it fit. I do the very same thing in pathways. This is just the way I do things. I open up I've got an idea for a speech. I come home, I write down the ideas for the speech, I write an outline, and then I go, oh, I better get on the speaking agenda. So I get a hold of my, I open up Easy Speak and I enter in next month, I want to speak on this date, and I put it because I need a goal. I need to be accountable. So I let Easy Speak be my accountability. I've got myself scheduled and I sit down and I open up pathways, and I open up all my pathways. And I open them up and I look, what kind of a speech will this be? And I go down through all my pathways, just as I did with my manuals, only they're just online now. And I look and I go, oh, I need one there. Oh, I need an elective there, because they all unfold. When you click on them, they'll unfold. And so I go, oh, I haven't finished my electives. Oh, I finished all my electives there, but I have the main one to do. I better get that done because I'll have level 4 done if I do that. And I missed it. So I think, can I adapt this speech to do that? And that's how I use my manuals. That's how I use pathways. I love pathways. I'm learning. And you know what? People say, oh, it's repetitive. How many CCs have you done in your Toastmasters time? I used to do a CC every single year. Yes, Phyllis, absolutely. 8, 10, 20, 30. Because if you are a professional sports person, you go out and you do skills, you do drills every day. Do the top basketball players just go out and play games and be the star? No, they do basic skills all the time. Do opera singers walk out on the stage and sing all the time without practice? Absolutely not. They train their voice and exercise their voice every day so that they're in top form. Same with concert pianists. They play scales and practice the basics. We are developing the art of speaking. There is nothing where we don't need to go back to the basics. I love doing icebreakers because I don't know about you, but my life has been really multifaceted and I've got a lot of icebreakers in me. I don't have to do the same one over. Write a different speech. Focus on gestures in this one, or focus on a real intimate part of your life, or or your public life, or your education, or raising your children, or being raised by a foster parent, or whatever it was. So just make it unique and to you. So that's how I think we stay engaged. And the final thought, and Dorothy, I'll just finish with this. Sometimes we're just reluctant to change. And that's the scariest for us. We change our clothes, we change our hair, we change our cars, we change our house, we change our address, we change our styles, we change our furniture. But that's because we choose to. But when somebody changes something around us, it's much more difficult for us to change. So we go, I'm not doing that. Well, I am doing that because I benefit from it and I win. So I'll leave it on that note. Carlos, I don't know if I answered your question, but I'll just say in conclusion that I love Pathways and I'm grateful that it's there. It's not perfect, but guess what? Some people think it's perfect. Some people think it's okay. Some people think it's marvelous, and some people think it's awful. So how should we change it? I don't know. That's the question. Who do you satisfy? Or do we just say, this is the program I signed up for and there'll be things for me to learn? And that's the one I choose. Okay, Dorothy.
Pat, I was just going to chime in there when you were listing all of those reasons why, or to redo your icebreaker speech, or you just need to practice vocal variety.
Oh, yes. I'm still working on it. Joseph's right there.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
Well, it has been wonderful to have you all here. It's so nice to see all of you and hear from you. And thank you, Pat, for giving us your evening tonight to share your wisdom and your stories with us. It is the way, it's what we do in Toastmasters. We share our stories, right? And yes, this is being recorded and we will post that on, well, I believe the link will be put on the District 21 website, and you'll be able to just download it there. It will be on a YouTube channel.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks,
Wonderful.
Dorothy, for inviting me. And thank you, everyone, for the gift of your time, your questions, and have an amazing experience being mentored and mentoring. We all have brilliance to share. Good night, everyone.